Well, hope everyone's having a wonderful Thursday here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. If we can, is that a little better? Okay, thank you very much. This is, of course, the annual Smokey Yunick Award that is given every year by Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, it honors the memory and the legend of the legendary car owner and mechanic, Smokey Yunick. We started this award back in 1997 to recognize an individual who starts out kind of at the bottom and then rises to the top in the motorsports industry. And since the passing of Smokey Yunick in 2001, we've carried on that tradition. Past winners of the Charlotte Motor Speedway Smokey Yunick Award include such legendary names as Cotton Owens, Junior Johnson, Roger Penske, and Rick Hendrick. And I guess you have probably already ascertained by now that this year's recipient is going to be Ray Evernham. Of course, Ray is a former modified race car driver, NASCAR crew chief, NASCAR car owner, analyst, entrepreneur. There aren't too many things that aren't on Ray Evernham's business card. So, Ray, first off, congratulations in being the 2015 recipient of the Smokey Yunick Award.
Well, thank you, Doug. I guess it's pretty fitting that the modifieds are on there practicing, so if I'm a little ADD on you, one of my guys, Danny Bones, driving car number 65 tonight, so a little plug for Danny. But, you know, just to be considered or have your name mentioned in the same sentence as someone like Smokey Yunick is very humbling, because there's two guys in the garage area that I know that I couldn't hold a candle to mechanically. One of them is Smokey Yunick, the other is Leonard Wood, and just to be considered is certainly an honor to have that mentioned. Smokey was a true genius and innovator, not only in the racing world, but in the aircraft world, in the regular automotive world, and he was a true character of our sport. So anytime my name is mentioned in the same sentence as Smokey Yunick, it's always an honor.
And you have a great appreciation for the history of the sport, don't you?
I do. I really do. I feel the sport's been really good to me, and you have a responsibility as a champion in the sport or someone who has benefited from a lifetime of being in it to carry that knowledge forward, to carry those stories, and to protect that heritage. And it is very important to me. We did a show on Americana about Smokey Yunick's truck, and going through the garage area, we have a car here today that was a replica of what Jerry Cook drove in the 1960s. It's important that the young people get to see that heritage and understand the passion and why we do it. It's really been a phenomenal sport. I cannot imagine for 1 second a life without having been involved in motorsports.
And of course, you kind of came onto the scene with this fresh-faced kid, Jeff Gordon, when he exploded into the NASCAR universe. Your first win was right here at Charlotte. Quick thoughts about Jeff Gordon, your time with him, and the fact that this will be his last race at Charlotte.
Certainly sad when I think it's his last race at Charlotte, but you know, I think back to all the great success and the fun that we had here. We came here in '92 and nobody really kind of knew who we were yet, and I think we swept both poles and both races at that time. We got to race head-to-head with people like Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Mark Martin in that series, and then Rick Hendrick right across the street believed enough in the both of us and to hire us, and then to come here. We got our first pole at Charlotte, we got our first win at Charlotte, you know, and we had you know, trials and tribulations here. We got that first big win, and then I got the largest fine in history at that time here at Charlotte. So it's always been our home track, and still love coming across here. Every time I think of Charlotte, I think of standing in Victory Lane there, and again, not just with Jeff, but being able to do that with Casey Kane and being here with Bill Elliott. So Charlotte is always has been a special place, and it's my home track.
By the way, you've been supplanted now for the biggest fine, but you already know that. So.
Thank goodness, because I had 20 years of having to answer that question, so thank goodness the fines are increasing.
So you're off the board for that. You're going to be busy this weekend returning to your crew chief roots. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm coming out of retirement, crew chief wise. You know, I think the last time I crew chiefed, it was a sprint car at Knoxville in 2010. But we're filming an episode of Americana in Wildwood, New Jersey. at something called the Race of Gentlemen, and you have to have a 1934 or older car, a 1953 or older engine or parts, and it's 1/8 drag races on the beach. It's really neat. It's an Art Deco area, big Ferris wheels and whatnot, but it's called the Race of Gentlemen, and you have to dress period correct of the 40s. So we asked if we could, was it truly a Race of Gentlemen, because I had a lady who would drive pretty good. So we built a car for Erin to drive, and Erin is going to be one of the first ladies now. They opened it up to race in the Race of Gentlemen on Saturday. So we're looking forward to that. But again, a great story about the history of racing and how America was affected post-World War II with a lot of people coming back from the war and wanting to go fast.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Throwback Rosie the Riveter theme there for Erin. One other thing here before we have Marcus Smith up here to give you your actual award. You mentioned Americana, the TV show. You also have a big live event here coming up locally.
We do. We have Americana Live. It's a car show that's at the Davidson Ingersoll Rand Complex on the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I believe that's the 27th and 28th of November this year. But it benefits Ignite, the clubhouse that we started for young adults on the autism and Asperger's spectrum to help them transition into the community. And we're really, really just happy with the support that we've been able to achieve. And we have 55 members through there, and I don't know the exact number of jobs, but we have people who've gotten jobs, they've gotten a driver's license, but 100% of the feedback from the parents of these young children have said that it's made a positive influence on their lives. They're socially more acceptable, they have more confidence, and as you know, someone on the spectrum is just socially different, and lots of times those kids aren't given an opportunity to get a job or to fit in because they are a little bit different. And my son Raymond John is on the spectrum, but Ignite benefits that. And you had asked me before if I had a story about Smokey, and I forgot to tell it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Well, I know we might be a little bit pressed for time, but always a big Smokey Unic fan and knew who he was, so I was a little bit intimidated by him because if you knew Smokey, he could be moody, you know. Yep. So he would come and stand by the back of the 24 garage at many of the big races and just sit there and watch me. And he was a little intimidating because at that time he had the white uniform on, and I think it was Prolong. Is that what he was? He was repping something for you guys, but he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't talk to me. So that went on, you know, basically kind of a whole season. And finally, at the end of one season at the PRI show, I was formally introduced to him, and I said, "It's really an honor to meet you, but you stood by my garage all year long and you didn't say anything to me. Why was that?" He said, "Oh, I wanted to watch you." He said, "I wanted to see if you knew what you were doing, and I'd heard you was a smartass." And I said, "What do you think now?" He said, "Oh, you know what you're doing, but you're a smartass."
So it was right on both counts.
Yeah, so it was, again, I got to spend a lot of time with Smokey Unic before he passed. He gave me some great advice, you know, in his own words, about dealing with manufacturers and things like that. But as I said, he was truly a genius and very far ahead of his time in a lot of areas.
All right, thanks for leaving the exact verbiage from Smokey out of that. All right, here to present the Smokey Unic Award, he is the Charlotte Motor Speedway President and General Manager, Marcus Smith. Marcus, come on up.
All right. Thank you, Doug. I'm going to take one of these mics here. Go right ahead. Well, Ray, I think it's really appropriate that you mention of course, Smokey, the award's named after, and Leonard Wood, two amazing legends in the sport. And the great thing about presenting this award to you today is you are in that company, and that is really special. You're a special guy on and off the track. You have made such an impact in this sport. I don't think we all even know it yet, but you're a certain future Hall of Famer. And we're thrilled to be able to award you with this year's Smokey Unic Award. And it says, for lifetime achievement in auto racing, it's presented to Ray Evernham. And on the medallion it says, Smokey Unic Award, Smokey's best damn garage in town. And I think it's safe to say that Ray Evernham is the best damn garage in town today. So, Ray, thank you so much for what you do for racing, for what you do in the community. And you're just a fantastic person that has made an awesome mark in the NASCAR world.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you.
All right, we have just a couple of minutes here if we have some folks with some quick questions for Ray Evernham. Right back here. Ray, you can just pick up that mic in the middle if you want to. Thank you very much, Marcus. All right.
Stan Creekmore with RPMTonight.com. Ray, it's always great to see you. Can you remember the first time you became aware of Smokey Yunick? And then what is the greatest thing he ever taught you?
Oh boy, Stan, I can't really remember the exact time, but I know that growing up I hung around a lot of garages that had race cars, and his name came up a lot when it came to guys talking about horsepower and engines and things like that. So it was probably, it might have been in the early days of, I worked with a man named Bob Weiss and another man named Jim Hoffman early in my probably 12, 13 years old, and understanding what that was, other than probably seeing his name in some of the magazines. But as my experience grew in racing, certainly his name was used more and more, and then you do the research and understand. And of course it's, you hear all the urban legends about things, and then as they grow, the 7/8 Chevelle and the driving away with the fuel cell out and all those things, and those they just build. And I think really Smokey used to come and visit me once a month when I started the Dodge program, and he would sit in my office, and he had his way of, he had his view, Smokey had his view on things, and he was pretty clear about it, but he was really clear about business more than you would think, and some of the things that he taught me were more about dealing with the manufacturers and the amount of change that you would have to go through with management and direction, and to be ready for that. And I never forgot that. That, and the other thing he taught me is you ain't going to get a motor to run worth a damn without a 6-inch rod. So that's those are the two things.
All right, Viv.
Viv Bernstein, New York Times. I want to change the subject just a little bit to this.
Of course you do.
Sorry. Just wanted to ask you if when you look at what you've seen of the 4 the last 2 years, is there a bit of a changing of the guard from the 48 to the 4 in NASCAR? And I wonder, I don't know what you heard about questions about Harvick's celebration and whether he was trying to mislead the post-race inspection. That would raise questions about Childress, the way they raise questions about Chad and the way they raise questions about you. Is that another sign that maybe there's a changing of the guard?
Well, if I still had the highest fine in history, I'd be trashing Kevin and Rodney right now to try and get them bumped up, but I don't, so I'm not going to say that they did that on purpose. But what I will say is something that I have been saying. These cars are much too aerodynamic. They're too dependent on aerodynamics, and what tells me that is that we're even having a conversation on why a guy would have to hit a wall during his celebration to try and move something so it wouldn't be inspected. Again, we've got to get these cars to the point to where if somebody pulls something 1/4 of an inch, it just doesn't matter. And we're talking about thousands. They say, you hear the old Vince Lombardi, football's a game of inches. Well, NASCAR's become a game of thousands. And to me, it's crazy. We've got to figure out what affects these cars, what does not affect these cars, and cut back some of those rules so we don't have this constant controversy. What Kevin Harvick and Rodney Childress did last week was incredible, right? They're back to the wall. They step up like a championship team, dominate the race. They do everything perfect, and they've got to answer this question this week. And to me, it takes away from everything that's great about the chase. And again, we're somewhat over-regulated in this sport, and we gotta back it down a little bit. Now, whether there's a changing of the guard, I think there's always going to be a changing of the guard in every sport. What Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus have done over the past 10 years, to me, is phenomenal. Phenomenal. And I think that they probably are looking to adapt. Your setups change, things based. There's been a lot of rule changes. They've got to get that feel back to Jimmy. When they lowered the cars or changed the aerodynamic, there's a little gap maybe there in communication that I think. But when you've got people as determined and talented as certainly Jimmy and Chad are, they'll still be in the game. But it's a sport, and it's a competitive sport, and people are coming into their own. Rodney and Kevin Harvick have got that combination, that chemistry that everybody's looking for, and they're both at the top of their game right now. And at a, you know, NASCAR is to me still the toughest form of motorsport in the world, and the window keeps getting narrower and narrower, you know, smaller and smaller. But so that talent, and when you're on your game, you know, guys are tough to beat, you know, and when you're racing the best every week, you're not going to win 10 races a year anymore. So is the guard completely changing? I don't know. There's just I think the guard got a few new members.
We'll go Lewis and then Tom, and that's about all the time we're going to have here.
Louis Frank of Reuters. Good lead-in, but this back to you. Considering all the engineers that are now in the NASCAR teams, how difficult would it be for someone to recreate your path from race driver, crew chief, to owner? Will it ever be done again?
Oh boy, you know, every time you say something can't be done again, somebody does it better. The sport's different. That was a different time. You know, I'm not saying it can't be done. I think it'd be a lot more difficult. I don't think a crew chief necessarily has to be an engineer. I think a crew chief needs to understand how to use engineering and be a good manager. You need to be a really, really good manager nowadays to be a crew chief, because the crews are so much bigger. I think we had 15 people when we won the championship, and now each team's got about 65 over there. A lot more to manage, a lot more to do. As far as again, setting the kind of record that Jeff Gordon and I set, I think the competition's a lot tougher, and things are a lot closer. I don't believe that the guys have enough room to set their car up to suit their driver. I think you have to set these cars up a certain way, and not every driver likes that at every racetrack. Again, I'd like to see the crew chiefs given some more tools in their toolbox to customize their car for their driver. I think that will make the racing a little bit better. Moving on into the ownership thing now, especially with what NASCAR's doing, it may prevent that from ever happening again. So I hope that there's always an entry way into this sport, because, you know, I can't say it'll ever be done, not ever be done, but it will be a lot more difficult, but at least it's still possible.
All right, Tom, we'll finish it up here.
Hey Ray, Tom Jensen, FoxSports.com. You alluded to the fact that you'd like to see the cars dirtied up a lot. And
I didn't say dirtied up. I said less aerodynamic.
Okay, less aerodynamic. How possible is it to do that? I mean, we've had three different aero packages the last 3 years, likely a different one next year. Could that step really be taken, and how much would be involved?
I think it could absolutely be taken. There's enough technology out there and enough people working together. The most important thing that you would have to do is know that someone's got to be in charge, someone's got to make that decision, and not everybody's going to be happy. And you can't run from both sides of the room. If the drivers complain and the owners complain, or whatever, somebody's got to be in charge. Say, look, this is what we're going to do. This is the package that we're going to have, but you've got to have that backed up with data. You know, again, I kid our guys all the time. I said, I know how to fix you guys. You're crying about it. I said, I would take the car to the racetrack. I'd cut that splitter right smack off of it. That's the first thing I would do. And then I'd keep cutting the rear spoiler until you screamed, and then I'd cut another inch off of it. You know, so it can be done with all the tools today, but the time has to be put into it right. Again, if you look at what happened with Indy this year, great ideas, but they rushed into it without all the backup data. And there is a way to do it. Right now, so many little things. TV last week, oh, this guy kicked out his skirt. Oh, this guy didn't. Stuff like that should not make a difference. It just shouldn't. You know, whether that skirt's there or not, there's a way to make these cars much less sensitive. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to worry about whether a guy's flaring a fender on pit road or if he's doing this, doing that. And I still believe that there's enough smart people out there now that could figure out what's really sensitive. It used to be, you know, the greenhouse, the deck lid, the things you could do. What really matters, and let's make the other stuff not matter, because all it's doing is eating up time, cost, and taking away from the racing.
Ray, thanks a bunch for your time. Congratulations on receiving the Smokey Unique Award here from Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Thank you, and thank you to Charlotte Motor Speedway, Marcus and Bruton and everybody for certainly remembering Smokey's name, but this will hang in my trophy case with honor. So awesome. Thank you.
And good luck in the race of gentlemen with Aaron, by the way.
Just a